Good day. This is a continuation of the previous video I made on how to use the Figma variable. So in this video, we'll be talking about the number variable. In my previous video, we look at the color variable, the boolean variable, and also the string variable. In today's video, we'll be looking at the number variable. So as the name implies, number is number. It has to do with numbers. So without much ado, I'll go into a design. I'll make a simple counter and illustrate how to implement this number variable. So I'm going to create a frame, iPhone 13 Pro Max. So I will need a layout. I think I have a mobile layout already. So I'll need to edit this layout. The margin, I want it to be 24 pixels. So what I want to do, I want to have a label up here and call this counter. So we're doing a counter, and this is going to be 24 pixels, and it's going to be bold. And again, I'll need another one here, which is going to be the main count. So for example, I can say 0, and the size of something we're having here, I'm going to give it this 96, and it's not going to be bold, it's going to be medium. So I want to have another text right under it, and this one I will say count. So this is going to be 16 pixels, and it's going to be semi bold. So I want to auto layout these two together, Shift A. Now make sure it's centralized. I want to create two buttons here. I want to create one here. So the height of the button is 64. And I want to create another one of it right here. So one of the button will be add, the other will be subtract. So I want to give them color. I'm going to fill them with a color. So this, I'll use a kind of blue color, just like it, and this is going to be just ordinary white color. So both of them are going to have the radius of 8 pixels, the corner radius of 8 pixels. And this being white button, I want to apply a shadow effect to it. So this is going to be 0. I'm going to make the opacity 10% and the blur to be 32 pixels. Now we need something inside this button to indicate they are real buttons. So I'm going to draw a line like this, make it 32 pixels. Now increase the thickness, something like this, and also have a round corner, just like this. I'm going to duplicate this by pressing Ctrl D, and I will rotate it by 90 degrees. So we have a plus. I'm going to group this or put it in a frame. I'll press Alt Command G from keyboard to put it in a frame, and I'm going to drag it into the button and centralize it. The color of the icon on the button is going to be white. So I'm copying this icon, Command C, Command V on this other one to paste to the same position. Now I'm going to remove this one so that I will have a minus here. So this is going to take the blue color and while this is going to take white color, the black I'm having here is going to take white color, just like this. Now the next thing we're going to do is to create variable for this counter. So to create variable, since we are dealing with numbers, we're going to create numbers variable. So what I will do is to deselect anything that is selected. For example, if a screen is selected, I'll just press escape from my keyboard to deselect everything so I can see local variable here. So I'll just click on the local variable and I'll create a new collection. So the new collection, I will call it counter. So the variable I want to create will be under this counter collection. So I want to create a variable which is going to be number, and I'll call this one count. And the count is initialized to 0. The default value is 0. So that is that. So I'm going to select this 0 here. And what I want to do first is to remove the line height. So I'm going to remove it like that. And this, I want to increase this to 8 pixels. So let me say 16 pixels. The distance between the counter and the 0. So I'm going to select this 0 here, and I'll go to the text property and apply a variable which is going to be count. So I've applied the variable to it, which is count. Now the next thing to do is to add interaction to this button. But before I do that, let me hide this grid by pressing Shift G on the keyboard so that we can see our button very clearly. So I'm going to select this plus button and I'll go to prototype and add interaction. So I'll say on click set variable. So the variable we are setting is going to be count. So it will set count to count plus 1. So whenever we tap on this plus, it increases our count by 1. So let me add a starting flow to this and we'll play it. So it has been loaded. So if I click or tap on this plus, our counter increased by 1. So I'm going to close this, and we'll have to add another interaction to this minus button so that it decreases our counter. So I'll go to interaction and click on this, and I will say set variable. How do you want to set variable? Since we are reducing the counter by 1, I'll just say set counter to counter minus 1. So by doing that, this will be deducting 1 from our counter. For example, if our counter is going up like this, so the minus 1 can be reducing it. But one of the problems we'll be having is that we'll be having a negative value, and we don't want our counter to have a negative value. So there is another thing we're going to add. That is when a conditional statement comes in. So I'm going to close this thing and go back to the minus and see what we have there. So on click, set counter to counter minus 1. So what I want to do now is to add a condition. The condition that I want to add is going to be, the condition I want to add will be if a counter is less than 0, so there should be something that will come up. So before we do that, I would like to design a small screen that will alert us that the counter cannot have negative value. So what I will do now, let me enable the columns so we can see it. Then I'm going to draw a frame just like what we are seeing right here. So this frame is going to give us an alert. So let me just move it out and give it color, which is going to be white, and also the border radius of 16 pixels. So all we are going to have here is just is just a text that will tell us that the counter cannot have negative value. So let's just say counter has reached the lowest value. So what we have here is counter has reached the lowest value. So this, let this be a medium text, and also the text height to be 22 pixels. I'll centralize it. Since this is an overlay, we need a kind of an icon here, so that when we tap it, the overlay closes. So I'm going to copy this plus out here, the plus icon we created earlier. So the white color there, I'm going to change it to something like this, and I will rotate it by 90 degrees, sorry, by 45 degrees, that we have something like this. So I'll also scale it down a little bit. So I will add interaction to this and say on click close overlay. So this overlay will be closed when that is clicked. Now since we have this, now what we're going to do now is to go to the minus and implement our conditional statement. We say if the count is less than 0. We're saying if the count is less than 0, give us an overlay, open an overlay. So maybe we need to rename this overlay. Let's call it counter overlay. It's very important to rename any frame so that it can be easily referenced. So in our conditional, I'll say open overlay. So when we are opening overlay, what is the name of the frame you're opening? So this is counter overlay. I'm going to select it like that, and it should be instance. Then we'll add a background of 40% black. I think that is that. I'm going to close this like this. So now we've given the condition to our minus that if counter is less than 0, it should give all this. Now let's play it and see what we have. So if I increase this can decrease it, and when we have it, it says counter has reached the lowest value. So we can always click on this to close overlay, but when we close overlay, see what happens. This gives us a negative value. So if I do it again, say counter has reached the lowest value. Since the counter is less than 0, will be giving us this overlay that the counter has reached the lowest value, while decreasing the counter again. So we need to add to our condition what will happen after the overlay goes. So I'll close this and I'll go back to our minus again. Then if counter is less than 0, so it will open an overlay. After opening an overlay, what else do we want it to do? So it should reset our counter back to 0. So what we just need to do is click on this plus and say set variable. What variable are we setting? Counter is going to be count equals 0. So what we are saying here is this: if counter is less than 0, it should open this overlay and tell us the counter has reached the lowest value. After that, it will still perform the operation of removing 1 from the counter, which will give us negative value, but we don't want that negative value to be repeating itself. So that's why we'll set counter back to 0. So I'm going to close this now and play what we have here. So before, if we click on this minus, it will bring out the counter overlay and again decrease the counter and give us -1, and we have implemented that we don't want it to happen. So if I click on this plus, it will add to counter. When I click on minus, it reduces the counter, and when it's less than 0, it say the counter has reached the lowest value. So if I click this overlay, the counter still is 0. So You can see. So you can do many things with numbers when it comes to using this variable, which is very useful. So most especially if you are doing something like adding item to cart and removing item from the cart. So thank you for your time and God bless you.